The small pink sneaker lay abandoned on the cold marble floor of Westfield Shopping Center, its Velcro strap still fastened as if its owner had simply vanished into thin air. Security footage would later show that Emma Rodriguez had been wearing both shoes just 17 minutes before her father Marcus discovered this single, devastating clue that his 7-year-old daughter was gone. Marcus Rodriguez had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, had led reconnaissance missions through hostile territory, and had trained soldiers to navigate the most dangerous combat zones on Earth. But nothing in his military experience had prepared him for the paralyzing terror of losing his child in a crowded shopping mall on what should have been an ordinary Saturday afternoon. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as shoppers continued their weekend routines, oblivious to the nightmare unfolding just feet away. Marcus knelt beside the tiny shoe, his calloused hands trembling as he picked it up. The Disney princess design was slightly faded from Emma's insistence on wearing them every day since her birthday 3 months ago. She had been so proud of those shoes, had insisted on tying them herself, even though she still struggled with the laces. Marcus Rodriguez had never intended to raise his daughter alone. When Sarah died in that car accident 2 years ago, he had been deployed overseas, receiving the devastating news through a crackling satellite phone connection that made her death feel surreal, almost fictional. The Army had granted him emergency leave, but by the time he made it home to Fort Collins, Colorado, Emma had already spent a week with Sarah's sister, confused and asking questions no 6-year-old should have to ask. The transition from active duty soldier to single father had been more challenging than any mission he had ever undertaken. Marcus had requested a transfer to a stateside position, accepting a significant demotion to become a training instructor at the nearby military base. The pay cut meant moving from their comfortable suburban home to a modest apartment complex that catered to military families, but Emma needed stability more than she needed space. At 34, Marcus carried himself with the disciplined posture that marked him as military even in civilian clothes. His dark hair was kept regulation short, and his gray eyes held the watchful quality of someone accustomed to scanning for threats. Emma had inherited her mother's warm brown eyes and infectious smile, but she possessed a stubborn streak that was pure Rodriguez. She approached the world with the fearless curiosity of a child who had never known real danger, a quality that both delighted and terrified her father. Their Saturday routine had become sacred over the past 18 months. After Marcus finished his morning run, they would make pancakes together, Emma standing on her step-stool at the counter, flour inevitably ending up in her hair despite her father's careful instruction. Then they would head to Westfield Shopping Center, not because they needed anything particular, but because Emma loved the carousel near the food court, and Marcus had learned that maintaining normal routines was crucial for a child processing grief. The mall held practical advantages for a cautious father. Marcus could position himself with clear sight lines while Emma played, could identify all exits within seconds, and could spot potential problems before they developed. These habits came naturally after years of tactical training, though he tried to appear relaxed so Emma wouldn't sense his constant vigilance. This particular Saturday had started like all the others. Emma had worn her favorite dress, the blue one with white flowers that made her feel grown up, paired with those pink sneakers that had become her signature. She had chattered excitedly during breakfast about a new friend at school, about a book she wanted to find at the mall bookstore, about whether they could get ice cream before or after the carousel ride. Marcus had listened with the focused attention he brought to all of Emma's stories, filing away details about her social dynamics and emotional state. Since Sarah's death, he had become hyper-aware of any changes in his daughter's behavior, ready to address signs of depression or anxiety before they could take root. So far, Emma seemed to be thriving despite the loss of her mother, though Marcus knew that grief could manifest in unexpected ways. The morning had proceeded normally as they walked through the mall's main corridor. Emma skipped beside him, occasionally running ahead to peer into store windows before returning to his side. Marcus maintained his usual position slightly behind and to her right, allowing her freedom to explore while keeping her within arm's reach. The crowd was typical for a Saturday afternoon. Families with children, teenagers in groups, elderly couples walking for exercise. They had visited the bookstore first, where Emma selected a chapter book about horses that she insisted she was ready to read independently. Marcus had his doubts about her ability to handle the advanced vocabulary, but he had learned to let her attempt challenges rather than limiting her based on age-appropriate guidelines. Emma consistently surprised him with her capabilities, and he had come to respect her self-assessment of her own readiness. Next, they had stopped at the toy store, not to buy anything but because Emma enjoyed examining the latest displays and explaining to her father which items she might want for her upcoming birthday. Marcus had been impressed by her restraint. She rarely asked for purchases, seeming to understand instinctively that their budget was tight. Instead, she treated these visits as entertainment, creating elaborate stories about the dolls and action figures as if she owned them already. The carousel had been their next destination, Emma's favorite part of every mall visit. She always chose the same horse, a white mare with a golden mane that she had named Snowflake. As the ride slowly rotated, Emma would wave enthusiastically at Marcus, who photographed her with the dedication of a professional photographer. These pictures filled his phone's memory, but Marcus couldn't bring himself to delete any of them. Each image captured a moment of pure joy that seemed miraculous given everything his daughter had endured. After the carousel, they had headed toward the food court for their traditional soft pretzel and lemonade. This was when Marcus typically allowed himself to relax slightly, settling into a corner table where he could observe the entire area while Emma ate and people watched. She had a gift for creating stories about strangers, imagining elaborate backgrounds for the families around them. Marcus found these narratives both entertaining and revealing, as Emma's fictional scenarios often reflected her own hopes and fears. It was during this transition to the food court that Marcus had made his critical error. Emma had spotted a small dog being walked near the mall's central fountain, and she had asked if she could pet it. The owner, an elderly woman with kind eyes, had encouraged the interaction. Marcus had evaluated the situation quickly. The woman appeared harmless, the dog was calm and friendly, and there were plenty of people around. He had given Emma permission to approach, maintaining visual contact while positioning himself to intervene if necessary. The interaction had lasted perhaps 3 minutes. Emma had knelt beside the small terrier, giggling as it licked her hands. The elderly woman had asked questions about Emma's age and school, the kind of innocent conversation that happened frequently during their mall visits. Marcus had relaxed his vigilance slightly, enjoying his daughter's happiness and the normalcy of the moment. When Emma had finished petting the dog and returned to his side, Marcus had suggested they continue toward the food court. Emma had agreed enthusiastically, already discussing her pretzel preferences. They had walked perhaps 50 feet when Emma realized she had dropped her small purse, a child-sized accessory that contained her allowance money and a few treasured items. Marcus had hesitated, torn between retrieving the purse and maintaining his protective position near Emma. The purse was visible on the floor near the fountain, abandoned among the feet of passing shoppers. Emma had looked up at him with those expressive brown eyes, clearly hoping he would retrieve her precious belongings, but trying not to ask directly. Against his better judgment, Marcus had made a decision that would haunt him for years afterward. He had told Emma to stay exactly where she was, pointing to a specific tile on the floor and instructing her not to move from that spot. Emma had nodded solemnly, understanding the importance of following her father's instructions precisely. Marcus had then jogged quickly toward the fountain, keeping Emma in his peripheral vision while navigating through the crowd. The retrieval had taken longer than anticipated. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A group of teenagers had clustered around the fountain, and Marcus had needed to politely work his way through them to reach the purse. He had also stopped briefly to help an elderly man who had dropped his packages, an act of courtesy that had cost him perhaps 30 additional seconds. During this entire time, Marcus had glanced frequently toward Emma's position, confirming that she remained safely where he had left her. When Marcus had finally retrieved the purse and turned to return to Emma, the space where she had been standing was empty. His first thought had been that she had simply moved to a better vantage point, perhaps stepping closer to a store window that had caught her attention. He had scanned the immediate area methodically, expecting to spot her familiar blue dress. Within seconds, the realization that Emma was truly missing had dawned on Marcus gradually, like a slow-motion catastrophe. First came confusion, then concern, then the crushing weight of panic as he began calling her name while pushing through the crowd. Other shoppers had turned to stare at him, some with sympathy, others with annoyance at his disruption of their peaceful afternoon. Marcus had forced himself to stop shouting and think tactically. Emma was an obedient child who rarely disobeyed direct instructions. If she had moved from her designated position, something had compelled her to do so. He had begun a systematic search of the immediate area, checking behind pillars, inside nearby stores, anywhere a small child might have wandered or been taken. It was during this search that Marcus had discovered the abandoned pink sneaker, and with it, the terrible confirmation that his daughter had not wandered away voluntarily. Emma would never have left her beloved shoe behind, would never have walked barefoot through the mall, even if something had frightened or confused her. The shoe's presence meant only one thing: Emma had been taken. The mall's security office had become Marcus's temporary command center within minutes of his discovery. The head of security, a former police officer named Tom Bradley, had immediately recognized the severity of the situation and had begun implementing emergency protocols. All exits were being monitored, store managers were being alerted, and the local police had been contacted. Marcus had provided a detailed description of Emma, including her clothing, approximate height and weight, and any distinguishing characteristics. He had also shared recent photographs from his phone, images that showed Emma's bright smile and expressive eyes. The security team had begun reviewing footage from the mall's extensive camera system, focusing on the time period when Marcus had left Emma alone. While waiting for additional law enforcement to arrive, Marcus had struggled to maintain his composure. His military training had taught him to compartmentalize emotions during crisis situations, but this was his daughter, his entire world, and the fear threatened to overwhelm his tactical thinking. He had forced himself to breathe deeply and focus on actionable steps rather than dwelling on worst-case scenarios. The initial police response had been professional but routine. Officers had taken Marcus's statement, gathered basic information about Emma, and begun their own canvass of the mall. Marcus had sensed their assumption that this was likely a case of a lost child rather than an abduction, despite the evidence of the abandoned shoe. He had tried to convey the seriousness of the situation, explaining that Emma would never have left her position voluntarily, but he could see skepticism in their eyes. Detective Sarah Chun had arrived approximately 40 minutes after Marcus's initial call to security. Chun was a specialist in crimes against children, and she had brought a different energy to the investigation. She had listened carefully as Marcus explained Emma's personality and habits, taking detailed notes about his daughter's likely reactions to various scenarios. Chun had also requested additional surveillance footage and had begun coordinating with the FBI, given the possibility of kidnapping across state lines. The security footage had revealed crucial information about Emma's disappearance. The cameras had captured Marcus leaving Emma at her designated position, then showed approximately 2 minutes of normal foot traffic around the area. Emma had remained exactly where her father had instructed, occasionally glancing in his direction, but staying motionless. The abduction had happened quickly and professionally. A woman in a maintenance uniform had approached Emma, engaging her in what appeared to be casual conversation. Emma had initially seemed hesitant, glancing toward the fountain where her father was visible in the distance. The woman had then shown Emma something, possibly a badge or identification, that had seemed to reassure her. Within 30 seconds, the woman had convinced Emma to follow her toward a service corridor that connected to the mall's loading dock area. Emma had walked willingly, apparently believing she was being helped by an authority figure. The woman had even paused to pick up Emma's dropped shoe, though she had not attempted to put it back on the child's foot. The footage had shown the woman's face clearly enough for identification purposes. She appeared to be in her 40s, with shoulder-length brown hair and unremarkable features. Her maintenance uniform had looked authentic, complete with proper identification badges and equipment. Most disturbing, she had moved through the mall with the confidence of someone familiar with its layout and security procedures. Detective Chun had immediately begun working with mall management to identify the woman. Real maintenance staff were being contacted and accounted for, and the authenticity of various uniforms and identification badges was being verified. Chun had also requested footage from surrounding businesses and traffic cameras, hoping to track the woman's movements before and after the abduction. For Marcus, each passing minute felt like an eternity. His military experience had taught him that time was always the most critical factor in any operation, and he could feel precious opportunities slipping away while bureaucratic procedures unfolded. He had offered to assist in the search, to use his tactical training to help locate Emma, but the police had insisted he remain available for questioning and coordination. The waiting was agony. Marcus had called his sister-in-law to inform her of the situation, struggling to find words that conveyed the severity without completely destroying her composure. Emma's aunt had immediately driven to the mall, arriving just as the FBI agents were setting up their mobile command unit in the security office. Special Agent Michael Torres had introduced himself as the lead federal investigator on the case. Torres was experienced in child abduction cases, and he had brought additional resources including behavioral analysts and technical specialists. He had assured Marcus that every available resource would be dedicated to finding Emma, but Marcus had detected the underlying statistics in the agent's careful words. Time was running out. The behavioral analysis had provided disturbing insights into the abduction. The woman's professional approach, her knowledge of the mall security blind spots, and her ability to gain Emma's trust quickly all suggested someone with experience in child abduction. This was not an impulsive crime or a case of mistaken identity. Emma had been specifically targeted and taken by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Agent Torres had begun developing theories about the abductor's motivations and likely next steps. Child trafficking was an obvious possibility, given the professional nature of the crime. Ransom was another option, though Marcus's modest military salary made him an unlikely target for financial extortion. There was also the possibility of someone with a personal vendetta against Marcus, though he could think of no enemies who would target his daughter. As the first hour of Emma's disappearance stretched into the second, Marcus had felt his military training beginning to override his emotional paralysis. He had started mentally cataloging everything he knew about Emma's routines, her favorite places, her fears and comfort objects. If he were planning a tactical operation to locate a missing person, what information would be most valuable? Emma was naturally trusting, but had been taught about stranger danger. She would only have gone willingly with someone who had presented convincing authority or had claimed to be helping her return to her father. She was also a creature of habit who found comfort in familiar places. If given any choice in her location, she would gravitate toward spaces that felt safe and homelike. The child was also remarkably observant for her age, capable of remembering and describing details that adults might overlook. If Emma had any opportunity to communicate or leave clues about her location, she would do so. Marcus had taught her basic safety protocols, including how to make herself visible to rescue personnel and how to remember important details about her surroundings. Most importantly, Emma was a fighter. Despite her small size and gentle personality, she possessed a stubborn determination that had helped her cope with her mother's death. She would not give up hope, and she would continue looking for opportunities to escape or communicate with potential rescuers. Marcus had to trust in his daughter's intelligence and resilience while working with law enforcement to bring her home. The mall had been effectively shut down as the investigation intensified. Shoppers were being questioned as they attempted to leave, and every vehicle in the parking structure was being searched. The woman in the maintenance uniform had seemingly vanished, but Agent Torres was confident that the extensive surveillance network would eventually reveal her escape route. Marcus had provided investigators with Emma's complete medical history, her dental records, and DNA samples from her hairbrush. These preparations felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging possibilities too horrible to contemplate. But Marcus forced himself to cooperate fully, knowing that any information might prove crucial in the hours and days ahead. The media had begun arriving as news of the abduction spread. Local television stations were setting up outside the mall, and reporters were seeking interviews with anyone connected to the case. Agent Torres had warned Marcus about the double-edged nature of media attention. Publicity could generate valuable tips from the public, but it could also alert the abductor that law enforcement was closing in, potentially putting Emma in greater danger. As evening approached, Marcus realized that Emma would not be coming home that night. Somewhere in the city, his 7-year-old daughter was alone and frightened, depending on strangers for food and shelter. The thought was unbearable, but Marcus forced himself to channel his anguish into determination. Emma needed him to be strong, to think clearly, to use every skill he had learned during his military career. Detective Chun had suggested that Marcus return to his apartment to rest and wait for developments, but he had refused to leave the mall. This was the last place Emma had been safe, the last place where he had been able to protect her. Leaving felt like abandonment, like giving up hope that she might somehow find her way back to their designated meeting spot. The security office had become a hub of activity as various law enforcement agencies coordinated their efforts. FBI agents worked alongside local police detectives, analyzing surveillance footage and following up on potential leads. Marcus watched from the corner, feeling both grateful for the attention his daughter's case was receiving and frustrated by his inability to contribute meaningfully to the search. Agent Torres had asked Marcus to compile a list of everyone who knew Emma's routine, anyone who might have had opportunity to observe their Saturday mall visits. The list was surprisingly short, consisting mainly of store employees who had come to recognize them, other regular visitors to the carousel, and a few military families from their apartment complex. The investigation had also begun focusing on Marcus himself, a standard procedure that he understood intellectually but found emotionally devastating. His military records were being reviewed, his financial situation analyzed, his personal relationships examined for potential motives. Marcus knew that these questions were necessary, but answering them while his daughter remained missing felt like a betrayal of precious time and resources. By 10 o'clock that evening, the initial search efforts had failed to locate Emma or identify her abductor. The woman in the maintenance uniform remained a mystery despite extensive investigation into the mall's employment records and security procedures. She had apparently used authentic-looking credentials to gain Emma's trust, but no one matching her description worked for any of the companies contracted to provide services to the mall. Agent Torres had briefed Marcus on the next phase of the investigation. An Amber Alert had been issued, broadcasting Emma's description and photograph across the state. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit was developing a profile of the likely abductor. Additional resources were being brought in from surrounding jurisdictions, and federal databases were being searched for similar crimes. Marcus had finally agreed to return to his apartment, but only after Detective Chun had promised to contact him immediately if any developments occurred. The drive home had been surreal, the familiar streets and buildings looking foreign in the darkness. Emma's car seat sat empty beside him, her small backpack still containing the snacks and coloring books they had brought for their mall visit. The apartment felt cavernous without Emma's presence. Her toys were scattered across the living room floor, and her favorite blanket was draped over the couch where she had left it that morning. Marcus had walked through the rooms mechanically, touching her belongings and trying to maintain hope that she would soon return to reclaim them. Sleep had been impossible. Marcus had lain in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through possible scenarios and potential leads. He had reviewed every detail of their morning together, searching for clues he might have missed, for signs that they were being watched or followed. The analysis yielded nothing useful, only the crushing awareness that he had failed in his most important mission, protecting his daughter. As dawn approached, Marcus had made a decision that would change everything. The official investigation was proceeding methodically, following established protocols and procedures. But Marcus possessed skills and knowledge that law enforcement couldn't fully utilize within their legal constraints. If the system failed to bring Emma home quickly, he would take matters into his own hands. Marcus Rodriguez had never failed a mission during his military career. He would not fail this one either. Emma was counting on him, and he would use every tactical skill, every contact, every resource at his disposal to bring her home safely. The war for his daughter's life was just beginning, and Marcus was prepared to fight it with everything he had. The breakthrough came at 2:47 a.m. on the third day, when Marcus's phone buzzed with a message that would shatter everything he thought he knew about Emma's disappearance. The text came from an encrypted number, containing only an address and the words, "Your daughter is safe. Come alone, tell no one." Marcus stared at the screen in his darkened apartment, his tactical mind immediately analyzing the implications. This wasn't a ransom demand or a taunt from Emma's abductor. The tone was different, almost protective. Someone was reaching out to him directly, bypassing law enforcement entirely. The question was whether this represented salvation or a trap designed to eliminate the only person still actively searching for his daughter. Detective Chun had kept Marcus informed of the official investigation's progress, which had been frustratingly slow. The woman in the maintenance uniform had vanished completely, leaving no traces in any database or surveillance system beyond the mall footage. Her credentials had been expertly forged, suggesting connections to organized crime or human trafficking networks. The FBI's behavioral analysts had developed a profile of a professional kidnapper, likely working as part of a larger operation that specialized in acquiring children for various illegal purposes. But this message suggested something entirely different. The phrasing implied that whoever sent it knew Emma's location and considered her well-being a priority. Marcus had encountered similar communication patterns during his military service, usually from informants or allies operating within hostile territory. Someone was trying to help him, but they couldn't risk official channels or law enforcement involvement. The address led to a location in an industrial district on the outskirts of the city, an area Marcus recognized from his reconnaissance training as ideal for clandestine meetings. Abandoned warehouses and minimal security lighting would provide cover for anyone wanting to avoid detection. It was also the perfect location for an ambush, isolated enough that gunfire wouldn't attract immediate attention from authorities or civilians. Marcus spent 20 minutes studying satellite imagery of the location on his laptop, memorizing the layout and identifying potential escape routes. The warehouse district was bounded by a river on one side and a freight rail line on the other. creating natural barriers that could either facilitate escape or trap him, depending on the circumstances. Multiple access roads provided various approach options, but they also meant his mysterious contact could position surveillance or backup personnel without Marcus detecting them. Despite the obvious risks, Marcus knew he had no choice. The official investigation had stalled, and Emma had now been missing for 3 days. Statistics showed that child abduction cases became exponentially more difficult to solve after the first 72 hours. If someone was offering information about Emma's whereabouts, Marcus had to pursue that lead regardless of personal danger. He prepared for the meeting with military precision, selecting equipment that would provide maximum tactical advantage without appearing overtly threatening. A concealed pistol, night vision scope, tactical knife, and communication device that could broadcast his GPS location to a secure server. Marcus also left detailed notes about the mysterious message hidden in his apartment, assurance that the information would eventually reach law enforcement if something happened to him. The drive to the industrial district took 45 minutes. Through empty streets, Marcus varied his route several times, using techniques learned during convoy operations to detect surveillance or pursuit. No one appeared to be following him, but professional surveillance teams would be nearly impossible to spot using conventional methods. He arrived at the designated location 15 minutes early, parking several blocks away and approaching on foot through a maze of abandoned buildings and shipping containers. The specified warehouse stood dark and silent among dozens of similar structures. Marcus positioned himself with clear sight lines to all approaches, then waited for his mysterious contact to appear. His military training had taught him patience during surveillance operations, but the knowledge that this meeting might lead to Emma's rescue made every minute feel like an eternity. At exactly 3:30 a.m., a figure emerged from the shadows near the warehouse entrance. Marcus studied the person through his night vision scope, noting immediately that this was not the woman who had abducted Emma from the mall. This was a man approximately 40 years old, moving with the careful precision of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. He carried no visible weapons, but maintained the alert posture Marcus associated with law enforcement or military personnel. The man positioned himself under a single security light, making himself clearly visible while keeping his hands in plain sight. This was the behavior of someone trying to establish trust, showing that he posed no immediate threat. Marcus waited another 5 minutes, scanning for signs of backup or surveillance, before emerging from his concealment position. As Marcus approached, the man's features became clearer. He was Hispanic, with graying hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent years in high-stress situations. His clothing was nondescript but high quality, the kind of tactical gear favored by private security professionals. Most importantly, his eyes held the steady focus Marcus recognized in fellow veterans, men who had seen combat and understood the weight of life-and-death decisions. "Sergeant Rodriguez," the man said, quietly as Marcus came within speaking distance. "My name is David Castellanos. I'm a federal agent, but I'm not here in any official capacity tonight." Marcus kept his hand near his concealed weapon while processing this information. The man knew his military rank, which wasn't necessarily significant given that personnel records were accessible through various channels. But there was something in Castellanos' tone that suggested deeper knowledge, personal familiarity with Marcus's background and capabilities. "Where is my daughter?" Marcus asked directly, unwilling to engage in preliminary conversation while Emma remained missing. Castellanos nodded approvingly at Marcus's directness. "Emma is safe, but she's being held by people who won't hesitate to kill her if they feel threatened. The situation is more complicated than law enforcement realizes, and any official intervention at this point would likely result in her death." The words hit Marcus like physical blows, confirming his worst fears about Emma's circumstances, while offering the first concrete hope he had felt since her disappearance. Someone knew where she was, and according to this agent, she was still alive. But the warning about official intervention suggested that the kidnapping was connected to something much larger and more dangerous than a simple child abduction. What kind of complication? Marcus demanded, his tactical mind already working through possibilities. Castellanos glanced around the empty warehouse district before responding. Your daughter wasn't taken randomly. She was specifically targeted. Because of your military service, specifically because of operations you conducted during your final deployment in Afghanistan. The revelation struck Marcus like a lightning bolt. His last tour had been classified at the highest levels, involving counter-terrorism operations against high-value targets in the most dangerous regions of the country. The missions had been successful, resulting in the elimination of several key terrorist leaders and the disruption of major smuggling networks. But they had also made him enemies, people who might seek revenge years later through attacks on his family. Which operation? Marcus asked, though part of him already knew. The answer: Operation Desert Falcon, Castellanos replied. The raid on the compound near Kandahar where you killed Ahmad Nazari. Marcus remembered that mission with crystal clarity. Nazari had been a mid-level Taliban commander who specialized in recruiting child soldiers and coordinating attacks on civilian targets. Intelligence had indicated that he was planning a major operation against a girls' school in Kabul, an attack that would have killed hundreds of innocent children. Marcus's team had been tasked with eliminating Nazari before he could execute his plan. The raid had been textbook perfect. Marcus's team had infiltrated the compound under cover of darkness, eliminated the guards silently, and located Nazari in his command center. The terrorist leader had reached for a weapon, and Marcus had killed him with a single precise shot. The entire operation had lasted less than 10 minutes, and no American personnel had been injured. Nazari's brother survived, Castellanos continued. Halil Nazari has spent the last 3 years building a network in the United States, specifically focused on identifying and targeting the soldiers who killed his brother. Emma was taken by people working for him. The pieces began falling into place with horrible clarity. The professional nature of Emma's abduction, the woman's knowledge of mall security procedures, the complete absence of ransom demands or communication with law enforcement. This wasn't about money or random violence. This was about revenge. A carefully planned operation designed to make Marcus suffer the way Halil Nazari had suffered when his brother died. Why didn't official channels know about this threat? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Castellanos' expression darkened. Because Halil Nazari has people inside law enforcement. The investigation into Emma's disappearance. As the anonymous phone call came at 4:17 a.m. on Thursday morning, jolting Marcus awake from the restless sleep that had become his only escape from the nightmare of Emma's disappearance. The voice was electronically distorted, but the message was crystal clear. Your daughter is alive, but not for long. If you want to see her again, you need to know the truth about why she was taken. Marcus sat up in bed, instantly alert despite the exhaustion that had plagued him for the past 4 days. His phone screen showed an unknown number, and the call quality suggested sophisticated encryption technology. This wasn't a prank or a false lead from well-meaning civilians. Someone with serious resources was reaching out to him directly, bypassing the entire law enforcement apparatus that had been working Emma's case. Who is this? Marcus demanded, but the line had already gone dead. Within minutes, his phone buzzed with a text message from the same encrypted number. Parking. Garage, level B3, northwest corner. Come alone, 1 hour. The message was followed by the address of a downtown office building that Marcus recognized as housing several federal agencies. Whoever wanted to meet him had chosen a location that would be under constant surveillance, suggesting they either had official authorization or were confident in their ability to avoid detection. Marcus spent the next 30 minutes preparing for what could be either a breakthrough in finding Emma or an elaborate trap designed to eliminate the one person still actively searching for her. He dressed in civilian clothes but concealed a pistol and tactical knife, weapons that might provide some protection if this meeting went wrong. More importantly, he activated a GPS tracking app on his phone and sent the coordinates to his sister-in-law, with instructions to contact Detective Chen if he didn't check in within 3 hours. The drive to downtown took 25 minutes. Through empty streets, Marcus varied his route several times, using counter-surveillance techniques learned during his military service to detect anyone following him. No suspicious vehicles appeared in his mirrors, but professional surveillance teams would be nearly impossible to spot using conventional methods. He arrived at the office building 15 minutes early, circling the block twice before entering. The parking garage. Level B3 was dimly lit and mostly empty at this hour, containing only a dozen vehicles scattered across spaces designed for several hundred cars. Marcus positioned himself behind a concrete pillar with clear sight lines to all approaches, then waited for his mysterious contact to appear. His military training had taught him patience during reconnaissance operations, but the knowledge that this meeting might provide crucial information about Emma's whereabouts made every second feel endless. At exactly 5:17 a.m., a woman emerged from the stairwell and walked purposefully toward Marcus's position. She appeared to be in her early 40s, with short blonde hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. Her clothing was professional but practical, the kind of outfit worn by federal agents or corporate security personnel. Most significantly, she moved with the controlled precision Marcus associated with law enforcement or military backgrounds. "Sergeant Rodriguez," the woman said as she approached his concealment position. "My name is Agent Sarah Mitchell. I work for a division of the federal government that doesn't officially exist." Marcus remained behind cover while processing this information. The woman's knowledge of his military rank suggested access to classified personnel files, and her reference to unofficial government operations indicated involvement in activities that operated outside normal legal constraints. During his military service, Marcus had encountered similar operatives, individuals who handled missions too sensitive or controversial for conventional military or intelligence agencies. "Prove it," Marcus said, unwilling to expose himself without verification of the woman's credentials. Agent Mitchell reached slowly into her jacket and withdrew a military challenge coin, tossing it onto the concrete floor where Marcus could see it clearly. The coin bore the insignia of the 75th Ranger Regiment, Marcus's former unit, along with specific markings that were only distributed to personnel involved in classified operations. More importantly, the coin showed signs of wear that indicated it had been carried by someone who understood its significance. "Operation Desert Falcon," Mitchell said quietly. "Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. November 15, 2019. You killed Ahmad Nazari during a raid on his compound." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Operation Desert Falcon had been classified at the highest levels, involving counter-terrorism operations against high-value targets in the most dangerous regions of Afghanistan. The mission details were known only to the soldiers who had participated and the intelligence officers who had planned it. Agent Mitchell's knowledge of the operation meant she had access to information that should have been restricted to a handful of people. "What does that have to do with my daughter?" Marcus asked, though a terrible suspicion was already forming. "In his mind, everything," Mitchell replied. "Emma wasn't taken by random criminals or human traffickers. She was specifically targeted because of that mission, because of what you did to Ahmad Nazari." Marcus emerged from his concealment position, keeping his hand near his weapon while studying Mitchell's face for signs of deception. Her expression was grave but sincere, showing the kind of controlled emotion he associated with professionals delivering devastating news. She clearly knew more about Emma's disappearance than she had revealed, and her knowledge of classified military operations suggested connections to intelligence agencies that operated far above local law enforcement. Nazari had a brother, Mitchell continued. Halil Nazari, who survived the compound raid, and has spent the last 3 years building a network of operatives inside the United States. His organization specializes in identifying American military personnel who killed his associates, then targeting their families for revenge. The revelation struck Marcus like lightning. His daughter hadn't been the victim of random crime, but had been specifically selected by terrorists seeking vengeance for missions he had conducted while serving his country. The professional nature of Emma's abduction, the complete absence of ransom demands, the sophisticated planning that had allowed her captors to vanish without trace, all of it suddenly made horrible sense. How many families? Marcus asked, dreading the answer. 7 so far, Mitchell replied. Emma is the 8th child taken by Nazari's network. The others. She paused, struggling with information that clearly disturbed her despite her professional training. The others were killed after their families failed to locate them within a specified time frame. Marcus felt his world collapsing as the implications became clear. Emma wasn't just missing. She was being held by terrorists who had already murdered 7 other children. The official investigation had been pursuing random criminals and human traffickers while the real perpetrators operated with impunity, protected by their knowledge of law enforcement procedures and capabilities. Why didn't anyone warn us? Marcus demanded, his voice tight with rage and desperation. Why weren't military families told about this threat? Mitchell's expression darkened. Because Halil Nazari has people inside law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Information about his network has been systematically suppressed or misdirected. Every attempt to warn potential targets has been blocked by officials who claim such warnings would cause unnecessary panic. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound Marcus had ever sustained. The very agencies responsible for protecting American families had been compromised by the same terrorists who had taken his daughter. Emma's case had been deliberately mishandled from the beginning, with resources diverted away from leads that might have exposed Nazari's network. Detective Chun, Agent Torres, even the FBI's specialized units had been operating with false information designed to protect Emma's captors. Where is she? Marcus asked, his military training helping him focus on actionable intelligence despite the emotional devastation. We believe she's being held at a compound in the mountains, approximately 200 miles from here, Mitchell replied. Our intelligence indicates that Nazari plans to execute her tomorrow night as part of a propaganda broadcast designed to intimidate other military families. Less than 24 hours remained before Emma would be murdered on camera. Her death turned into a recruiting tool for terrorist organizations. The timeline explained why Mitchell had risked this clandestine meeting, why she was operating outside official channels that had already proven to be compromised. Emma's life hung in the balance, and conventional law enforcement was either unwilling or unable to save her. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. What's your stake in helping Emma? Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, her professional composure showing signs of strain. Because I have a daughter the same age, and because I've watched 7 other families destroyed by this monster. The official response has been inadequate, constrained by legal procedures and bureaucratic protocols that Nazari's people have learned to exploit. Marcus nodded, understanding the deeper implications of Mitchell's words. She was offering to help not because of professional obligations, but because the system had failed repeatedly, allowing innocent children to die while their killers operated with relative impunity. Sometimes justice required actions that couldn't be taken through official channels, missions that had to be conducted by individuals willing to accept personal responsibility for their outcomes. What do you need from me? Marcus asked. Your military skills, Mitchell replied immediately. The compound where Emma is being held is heavily fortified, with multiple layers of security and at least 12 armed guards. A conventional law. Enforcement assault would fail, and Emma would be killed before officers could reach her. Marcus was already shifting into tactical planning mode, his mind automatically analyzing the challenge ahead. 12 guards represented significant firepower, but they would also create vulnerabilities if approached correctly. Mountain terrain would provide both advantages and disadvantages, offering concealment for infiltration but limiting escape routes. If the operation went wrong, "I need detailed intelligence," Marcus said. "Floor plans, guard rotations, weapons inventory, communication systems, everything you can provide." Mitchell reached into her briefcase and withdrew a tablet computer. Loaded with surveillance photos, architectural drawings, and intelligence reports. The compound was a converted hunting lodge situated on 50 acres of remote wilderness, accessible only by a single mountain road that wound through dense forest. Motion sensors and security cameras covered all approaches, feeding information to a central monitoring station inside the main building. Emma is being held in a basement room that's been reinforced with steel plating, Mitchell explained, showing Marcus photographs of the facility's interior. The only access is through a heavily monitored stairwell that provides perfect fields of fire for defending guards. Marcus studied the intelligence materials with the focused intensity he had brought to pre-mission briefings in Afghanistan. The compound's defenses were formidable, designed specifically to prevent exactly the kind of rescue operation he was contemplating. But every defensive position created corresponding vulnerabilities if approached from unexpected angles, and Marcus had spent years learning to identify and exploit such weaknesses. "The security systems are networked through satellite communications," Mitchell continued. "If those systems can be disabled, the guards would lose their early warning capabilities and surveillance coverage." "Electronic warfare equipment?" Marcus asked. "Available, along with whatever weapons and gear you'll need for the assault." They spent the next 2 hours reviewing detailed intelligence about the compound and its defenses. The guards worked in shifts with at least 4 men awake and alert at all times. Most were former military or paramilitary personnel with combat experience, meaning they would respond professionally to any attack. The building's construction incorporated defensive features that would channel attackers into kill zones while protecting the defenders. "It's a fortress," Mitchell admitted, "designed by people who understand exactly how special operations forces conduct rescue missions." Marcus studied the photographs and floor plans with growing determination. Emma was somewhere in that basement, probably terrified, but hopefully still believing that her father would find a way to save her. The compound's defenses were intimidating, but Marcus had faced similar challenges during his military career. The key was identifying weaknesses that the defenders might not have anticipated. "The power supply," Marcus realized, pointing to electrical infrastructure visible in the surveillance photos. "Everything depends on electricity. Security systems, communications, even basic lighting. If I can cut power to the entire facility, the guards would be operating blind while I have night vision equipment." Mitchell nodded approvingly. "The main power line runs along the access road, supported by wooden poles that would be vulnerable to explosive charges. But you'd need to coordinate the power failure with your assault, timing everything perfectly to maximize confusion while minimizing the guards' ability to adapt." Marcus was already formulating the basic outline of an attack plan. Approach the compound during darkness, disable the power grid, eliminate the guards systematically using night vision advantages, then locate and extract Emma before backup generators could restore defensive systems. The operation would require precise timing and flawless execution, with no margin for error. "I'll need specialized equipment," Marcus said. "Military-grade weapons, night vision systems, communications gear, and demolition supplies." "Already arranged," Mitchell confirmed. I have access to a federal armory, and certain items can be temporarily reassigned for operations like this. As dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Mitchell provided Marcus with final intelligence updates and logistical details. Emma appeared to be unharmed, but was showing signs of increasing stress as Nazari's deadline approached. The terrorist leader himself was expected to arrive at the compound that evening to personally oversee the execution, creating both additional challenges and opportunities. "There's something else you need to understand," Mitchell said as they prepared to separate. "If this operation goes wrong, if you're captured or killed, I won't be able to help you officially. As far as the federal government is concerned, this meeting never happened." Marcus met her eyes steadily. "I understand. Emma is my responsibility, and I'll do whatever it takes to bring her home. The equipment will be delivered to a storage facility on the outskirts of town," Mitchell said, handing him an address and access codes. "Everything you need for tonight's operation, plus extraction resources if you can reach the designated pickup point." They parted without handshakes or formal farewells, two professionals who understood that Emma's life depended on their ability to work outside the system that had already failed her. Marcus drove home through morning traffic, his mind already focused on the mission ahead. 12 hours remained until darkness would provide cover for his assault on the mountain compound. Back in his apartment, Marcus began systematic preparations for what would likely be the most important mission of his life. He studied the intelligence materials repeatedly, memorizing guard positions, defensive layouts, and potential escape routes. The compound's remote location worked in his favor, as gunfire wouldn't attract immediate attention from civilians or law enforcement. But it also meant that backup support would be hours away if something went wrong. Marcus also spent time looking at photographs of Emma, reminding himself why this mission mattered more than his own survival. His daughter's smile, her absolute trust that her father would always protect her from harm, her courage in facing challenges that would overwhelm most adults. She was depending on him now in a way that transcended ordinary parental responsibility. The official investigation continued around him, with Detective Chun calling to provide updates on leads that Marcus now knew were being deliberately misdirected. Agent Torres remained committed to finding Emma through official channels, unaware that his efforts were being undermined by terrorists operating within the system itself. Marcus maintained his cooperation while secretly preparing for an operation they would never authorize. As afternoon turned to evening, Marcus received final intelligence updates through encrypted messages. The guards had maintained their regular routines, suggesting they weren't expecting any immediate threats. Emma remained in her basement prison, apparently unharmed but clearly frightened as the execution deadline approached. Most significantly, Halil Nazari had arrived at the compound to personally oversee the final preparations. The terrorist leader's presence complicated the tactical situation significantly. Nazari would be accompanied by additional security personnel, increasing the total number of hostiles Marcus would need to eliminate. But it also created an opportunity to end the broader threat permanently. If Marcus could kill Nazari during the rescue operation, Emma would be safe from future revenge attempts, and other military families would be protected from similar attacks. Marcus made his final preparations as darkness settled over the city. He dressed in black tactical gear that would provide maximum mobility while minimizing visibility. His weapons were loaded and secured, with backup ammunition arranged for quick access. Most importantly, he carried a small photograph of Emma that had been taken during their last happy day together, something to remind him why success was the only acceptable outcome. The drive to the storage facility took 40 minutes through industrial areas that were largely deserted after business hours. Marcus retrieved the specialized equipment Mitchell had provided: military-grade assault rifle, night vision goggles, tactical explosives, encrypted communication system, and enough ammunition for an extended firefight. Everything he needed to conduct a one-man war against the terrorists holding his daughter. From the storage facility, Marcus drove toward the mountains using back roads that avoided traffic cameras and police patrol routes. The compound was located in wilderness, area that would provide excellent concealment for his approach, but would also make extraction difficult if he was wounded during the assault. Success would require eliminating all hostile personnel quickly and efficiently, leaving no one alive to pursue Emma during their escape. As Marcus began the final approach to the mountain compound, he reflected on the strange journey that had brought him to this moment. 4 days ago, he had been a single father trying to provide normal childhood experiences for his daughter. Tonight, he was Sergeant Rodriguez again, a soldier preparing to conduct the most important mission of his career against enemies who had made the fatal mistake of threatening his family. The compound came into view as Marcus crested a ridge, approximately 1 mile from his target. Lights burned in several windows, and he could see the silhouettes of guards moving past periodically. Security cameras swept the grounds methodically, their infrared beams invisible to naked eyes, but clearly visible through his night vision equipment. Somewhere in that building, Emma was waiting for rescue, trusting that her father would find a way to bring her home safely. Marcus settled into a concealed observation position and began final reconnaissance of his target. The guards appeared, alert but relaxed, following routine patrol patterns that suggested they felt secure in their mountain fortress. The building's defenses were exactly as Mitchell had described, formidable but not impregnable to someone with proper training and equipment. 4 hours remained until Nazari's midnight deadline for Emma's execution. In that time, Marcus would need to infiltrate the compound, eliminate at least 15 hostile combatants, locate and breach Emma's prison, and extract her safely from the area. The odds were heavily stacked against success, but Marcus had faced similar challenges during his military career and had never failed a mission when American lives were at stake. As Marcus began moving toward the compound, staying low and using terrain features for concealment, he thought about Emma's favorite bedtime story, the one about a brave knight who traveled to distant lands to rescue a princess from a terrible dragon. Tonight, that fairy tale would become reality, and Marcus would prove that some bonds are stronger than fear, that some love transcends any obstacle. The rescue of Emma Rodriguez was about to begin, and her father would either bring her home safely or die trying. There would be no other acceptable outcome. The first explosive charge detonated at exactly 10:47 p.m., severing the main power line that fed electricity to Khalil Nazari's mountain compound. In the span of 3 seconds, the fortress-like hunting lodge was plunged into complete darkness, its sophisticated security systems failing simultaneously as backup generators struggled to activate. Marcus Rodriguez crouched in the tree line 50 meters from the building's perimeter, watching through night vision goggles as confusion erupted among the guards who had been patrolling the grounds with casual confidence just moments before. The power failure had been timed to coincide with the shift change, maximizing the disruption to the terrorists' defensive routines. Marcus could see guards stumbling in the darkness, calling out to each other in Arabic and English as they tried to understand what had happened. Emergency lighting flickered on in some sections of the building, casting erratic shadows that would interfere with their ability to identify targets while providing Marcus with clear visual references for his assault. 3 guards emerged from the main entrance carrying military-grade flashlights, their beams sweeping the surrounding forest in search of threats. Marcus tracked their movements through his scope, noting their positions and calculating the sequence in which he would need to eliminate them. These men were professionals, former soldiers or mercenaries who understood tactical procedures, but they were operating at a severe disadvantage without their electronic surveillance systems. Marcus activated his encrypted radio and whispered into the microphone, "Overwatch, this is Ranger 1, primary objective initiated. Request confirmation on extraction protocol." Agent Mitchell's voice crackled through his earpiece after a brief delay. Ranger 1, extraction team is standing by at designated coordinates. You have approximately 90 minutes before local authorities respond to disturbance reports. 90 minutes to infiltrate a fortified compound. Eliminate 15 to 20 hostile combatants, locate Emma in a basement room, and extract her safely through mountain terrain. The timeline was brutally tight, but Marcus had conducted similar operations during his military service with even more restrictive parameters. The key was maintaining momentum while avoiding mistakes that could result in Emma's death. Marcus moved through the forest with the silent precision learned during years of combat operations, approaching the compound from the northeast where terrain features provided maximum concealment. The guards were still focused on the power line failure, assuming that their main threat would come from the obvious direction of the sabotage. This tactical error would cost them their lives and create the opening Marcus needed to begin his assault. The perimeter fence was 8 feet high and topped with razor wire, designed to funnel attackers toward monitored access points where they could be engaged by defensive positions. Marcus bypassed this obstacle by climbing a large pine tree that overhung the fence line, dropping silently into the compound's interior behind a storage shed that blocked his landing from the guard's view. From his new position, Marcus could see the main building clearly through his night vision equipment. The structure was larger than the intelligence photographs had suggested, with multiple wings and additions that created a complex layout with numerous rooms and corridors. Emma could be hidden anywhere in that maze, and Marcus would need to locate her quickly while fighting his way through organized resistance. 2 guards walked past his concealment position, speaking in low voices about the power failure and discussing whether they should investigate the perimeter or remain close to the building. Marcus allowed them to pass, then emerged silently behind them. His tactical knife found the first man's throat before either guard could react, while his left hand clamped over the second man's mouth as the blade punctured his carotid artery. Both men died without making a sound, their bodies dragging into the shadows behind the storage shed. Marcus relieved the dead guards of their weapons and ammunition, adding an AK-47 assault rifle and 4 spare magazines to his arsenal. He also took their radio headsets, hoping to monitor the terrorists' communications and gain intelligence about their defensive positions. The radios were tuned to an encrypted frequency, but Marcus could hear fragments of conversation suggesting that the compound's leadership was trying to organize a coordinated response to the power failure. Moving closer to the main building, Marcus encountered 2 more guards positioned near the front entrance. These men were more alert than their dead comrades, scanning the darkness with trained eyes while maintaining defensive positions that provided mutual support. Marcus would need to eliminate both simultaneously to prevent either from raising an alarm that could endanger Emma. Marcus positioned himself behind a concrete planter that offered cover while providing clear shots at both targets. He chambered a round in the silenced pistol Mitchell had provided, then aimed carefully at the closer guard's head. The weapon's suppressor reduced the gunshot to a whisper that was masked by the compound's emergency generators, and the guard dropped instantly without alerting his partner. The second guard noticed his colleague's collapse and began turning toward Marcus's position while reaching for his radio. Marcus's second shot caught him in the center of his forehead, preventing any communication with the building's interior. 2 more terrorists were dead, and Marcus was now within 20 feet of the main entrance. The building's front door was reinforced steel with electronic locks that had failed when the power was cut. Marcus tested the handle and found it unlocked, suggesting that the security system's failure had disabled all electronic barriers. He cracked the door slightly and peered into a darkened hallway illuminated only by battery-powered emergency lights that cast long shadows in all directions. Marcus could hear voices deeper in the building, men calling out orders and questions as they tried to organize their defense without their usual technological advantages. The confusion was working in his favor, but it would be temporary. Professional soldiers adapted quickly to changing circumstances, and these terrorists would soon implement backup procedures that could make Emma's rescue much more difficult. Entering the building required abandoning the advantages of outdoor combat and accepting the risks of close-quarters fighting in unfamiliar territory. Marcus moved through the entrance hall with his assault rifle ready, using the sparse emergency lighting to navigate while maintaining visual contact with potential threats. The building's layout was more complex than the intelligence reports had indicated, with multiple corridors branching off in different directions. A terrorist appeared at the far end of the main hallway, his flashlight beam sweeping toward Marcus's position. Marcus dropped to one knee and fired a 3-round burst that caught the man in the chest, the suppressed gunfire barely audible above the background noise of generators and ventilation systems. The terrorist collapsed without identifying Marcus's location, buying precious seconds before his absence would be noticed. Marcus advanced deeper into the building, following signs that led toward a basement access stairwell. Emma was supposedly being held in a reinforced room below ground level, but reaching her would require fighting through whatever defensive positions the terrorists had established in the building's interior. Each step took him further from potential escape routes while increasing the likelihood of encountering organized resistance. The stairwell door was locked, but Marcus's training included techniques for defeating standard security measures. A small explosive charge destroyed the locking mechanism without creating enough noise to alert guards in other parts of the building. The basement access was narrow and steep, creating a natural choke point that defenders could use to their advantage. Marcus descended the stairs slowly, his weapon trained on the darkness below while his night vision equipment revealed the basement's layout. The underground level was smaller than the main floor, but included several rooms that could serve as prison cells or interrogation chambers. Emergency lighting was minimal, creating a maze of shadows that could conceal threats from multiple directions. A guard emerged from a side corridor as Marcus reached the bottom of the stairs, his AK-47 already trained on the stairwell entrance. Marcus threw himself sideways as automatic gunfire erupted, bullets ricocheting off concrete walls while he rolled behind a structural pillar. The terrorist's muzzle flashes destroyed his night vision temporarily, creating a tactical disadvantage that could prove fatal in the confined space. Marcus waited for the guard to reload, then emerged from cover with his assault rifle set to full automatic. A sustained burst of gunfire caught the terrorist as he tried to insert a fresh magazine, multiple rounds impacting his torso and head. The man collapsed in a heap, his weapon clattering across the concrete floor as emergency lights flickered in the disturbed air. The gunfight had been loud enough to alert other guards in the building, and Marcus could hear footsteps and shouted commands from the floor above. Time was running out before the terrorists organized a coordinated response that could trap him in the basement. He needed to locate Emma quickly and begin extraction procedures before superior numbers overwhelmed his tactical advantages. Marcus moved through the basement methodically, checking each room for signs of his daughter's presence. Most spaces were empty or contained equipment and supplies, but one door was reinforced with steel plating and secured with multiple electronic locks that had failed when the power was cut. This had to be Emma's prison, the room where she had been held for the past 4 days while her captors planned her execution. The door was unlocked but heavy, requiring significant effort to open due to its reinforced construction. Marcus pulled it back slowly, prepared for the possibility that guards might be waiting inside or that the room might be booby-trapped. Instead, he found Emma huddled in the corner of a small cell, her eyes wide with terror but her expression changing to overwhelming relief when she recognized her father. "Daddy," Emma whispered, her voice hoarse from crying but filled with absolute joy at seeing him. She was wearing the same clothes from their mall visit 4 days earlier, now dirty and wrinkled but otherwise appeared unharmed. Marcus had never seen anything more beautiful than his daughter's face in that moment, confirmation that she was alive and that his desperate mission had not been in vain. Marcus rushed to Emma and gathered her into his arms, feeling her small body trembling against his chest as she clung to him with desperate strength. "It's okay, sweetheart," he whispered into her ear. "Daddy's here now. I'm going to take you home." "I knew you would come," Emma said through her tears. "I knew you wouldn't let the bad men hurt me." Marcus performed a quick medical assessment, checking for injuries or signs of abuse. Emma appeared to be physically unharmed, though clearly traumatized by her ordeal. She was alert and responsive, able to walk without assistance, which would be crucial for their escape through the compound's dangerous interior. "Emma, I need you to be very brave for a few more minutes," Marcus said, looking directly into her eyes. "We have to leave this place, but there might be more bad men between us and safety. Can you do exactly what Daddy tells you to do?" Emma nodded solemnly, her trust in her father absolute despite the terrifying circumstances. Marcus gave her a small pair of foam earplugs from his tactical gear, explaining that there might be loud noises but that she should stay close to him no matter what happened. He also wrapped her in his spare jacket, both for warmth and to make her less visible in the darkness. Footsteps echoed in the stairwell above them, accompanied by voices speaking in Arabic and English. The terrorists had discovered the basement access and were preparing to descend in force. Marcus's extraction would be opposed by multiple hostiles who knew the building's layout better than he did, and who had nothing to lose in a final confrontation. Marcus positioned Emma behind a concrete wall that would provide cover from gunfire, then prepared to engage the approaching terrorists. His ammunition supply was limited, and he would need to make every shot count while protecting his daughter from stray bullets or ricochets. The confined space of the basement would amplify gunfire and create acoustic confusion that could disorient both sides. 3 guards appeared at the bottom of the stairwell, their flashlights creating overlapping beams that illuminated Marcus's position. He opened fire immediately, his assault rifle set to semi-automatic to conserve ammunition while maintaining accuracy. The first terrorist went down with a bullet through his chest, while the second dove for cover behind a concrete pillar. The third guard managed to return fire, his AK-47 chattering on full automatic, as bullets sparked off walls and equipment around Marcus's position. Marcus shifted to a different firing position and put 2 rounds into the man's center mass, dropping him beside his dead companion. The second guard remained behind cover, probably calling for reinforcements while preparing to resume the firefight. "Emma, stay down and cover your ears," Marcus commanded, then pulled a fragmentation grenade from his tactical vest. The explosive would be dangerous in the confined space, but it was the most effective way to eliminate the remaining threat quickly. He cooked the grenade for 2 seconds, then threw it toward the guard's position while shielding Emma with his body. The explosion was deafening in the basement's confined space, but it accomplished its purpose. The remaining guard was eliminated, and the blast debris would make it difficult for additional terrorists to descend the stairwell safely. Marcus had maybe 5 minutes before the building's remaining defenders organized a more systematic assault on the basement. Marcus lifted Emma into his arms and moved toward the stairwell, stepping carefully over rubble and bodies, while maintaining situational awareness for additional threats. The explosion had damaged the emergency lighting, creating deeper shadows that would provide concealment, but also hide potential ambushes. Every step toward the surface increased their chances of survival while exposing them to greater risks. The stairwell was partially blocked by debris from the grenade blast, but Marcus was able to climb over the obstacles while carrying Emma. She remained calm despite the violence around her, trusting completely in her father's ability to protect her from harm. Her courage gave Marcus strength as they emerged into the building's main level, where additional challenges awaited. The main floor was no longer dark and quiet. Emergency lighting had been supplemented by portable generators, and Marcus could see armed figures moving through various corridors as they searched for the intruder who had killed their comrades. The element of surprise was gone, replaced by a running battle that would test Marcus's combat skills against multiple opponents in their own territory. Marcus moved through the building with Emma pressed against his chest, using furniture and architectural features for cover while avoiding the search teams that were methodically clearing each room. His night vision equipment provided advantages in the inconsistent lighting, but the terrorists' superior numbers and familiarity with the building's layout created significant challenges. A guard rounded a corner directly ahead of Marcus's position, his assault rifle raised and ready to fire. Marcus drew his pistol one-handed while continuing to hold Emma, putting 2 bullets into the man's chest before he could react. The gunfire was loud in the enclosed space, and Emma flinched against her father's shoulder, but remained silent as he had instructed. More terrorists were converging on their position, drawn by the sound of gunfire. Marcus could hear boots on hardwood floors and urgent voices, coordinating a search pattern that would eventually trap him if he remained in the building. The main entrance was blocked by at least 3 guards, while side exits were being systematically covered by additional personnel. Marcus spotted a window that faced the compound's rear perimeter, away from the main concentration of guards. The glass was reinforced but not bulletproof, and breaking through would provide access to the forest where Marcus's tactical advantages would be maximized. He carried Emma to the window and used his rifle butt to smash the glass, clearing away sharp fragments that could cause injuries. "Hold tight, sweetheart," Marcus whispered to Emma as he prepared to jump through the window. "We're almost safe." The drop to the ground outside was 8 feet, manageable for someone with Marcus's training, but potentially dangerous while carrying a 7-year-old child. Marcus landed hard but managed to absorb the impact without injuring Emma, then immediately moved toward the tree line where darkness would provide concealment from pursuit. Shouts erupted from inside the building as the terrorists discovered the broken window and realized their prisoners had escaped. Flashlight beams began sweeping the compound's exterior, searching for movement while guards took positions to prevent Marcus from reaching the perimeter fence. The final phase of the battle would be fought in the forest, where Marcus's military training would provide maximum advantage. Marcus reached the tree line as the first guards emerged from the building. In pursuit, he set Emma down behind a large oak tree that would provide cover from gunfire, then turned to engage the terrorists who were following their trail. His assault rifle had 2 magazines remaining, enough ammunition for a sustained firefight if he maintained fire discipline and made every shot count. The pursuing guards were bunched together, making them vulnerable to automatic weapons fire. Marcus set his rifle to full auto and swept the group with a long burst, dropping 3 men and forcing the others to dive for cover. The survivors returned. Fire wildly, their muzzle flashes destroying their night vision while revealing their positions to Marcus's thermal scope. Marcus eliminated 2 more terrorists with carefully aimed shots, then reloaded while moving to a different position. The compound's remaining defenders would be more cautious now, understanding that they were fighting someone with professional military training. But they would also be desperate, knowing that their leader Halil Nazari was somewhere in the building and expecting them to prevent his prisoners from escaping. A new group of guards emerged from the building, these men moving with better tactical coordination as they advanced toward the forest. Marcus counted at least 6 opponents, too many to engage simultaneously without risking Emma's safety. He would need to use stealth and patience, eliminating them individually while avoiding decisive confrontation. Marcus moved deeper into the forest, carrying Emma while using terrain features and vegetation for concealment. The trees provided excellent cover, but they also limited his ability to maintain situational awareness of threats approaching from multiple directions. The pursuing guards were spreading out, attempting to surround his position while maintaining radio contact with their command element. A terrorist appeared 20 meters to Marcus's left, his flashlight beam sweeping through the underbrush as he searched for tracks or other signs of passage. Marcus left Emma hidden behind fallen log and stalked the guard silently, approaching from behind while the man remained focused on his search pattern. Marcus's knife found the terrorist's throat before he could raise an alarm, another enemy. Eliminated without alerting his companions. 2 more guards were moving through the forest approximately 50 meters away, their voices carrying clearly in the still mountain air. Marcus retrieved his daughter and continued moving toward the compound's perimeter, staying ahead of the search teams while working toward the extraction point where Agent Mitchell's team would be waiting. The perimeter fence appeared through the trees, its razor wire gleaming in the moonlight that filtered through the forest canopy. Marcus had memorized the location of a drainage culvert that passed under the fence, providing an escape route that would avoid the need to climb over the razor wire while carrying Emma. The culvert was narrow but passable, leading to a stream that would help mask their tracks. As Marcus approached the fence, automatic gunfire erupted from multiple positions behind them. The terrorists had found their trail and were closing in rapidly, using suppressive fire to prevent escape while coordinating their final assault. Marcus had perhaps 2 minutes before they would be surrounded and forced into a desperate last stand. Marcus lifted Emma and carried her toward the drainage culvert, moving as quickly as possible while maintaining concealment from the pursuing guards. The opening was partially blocked by debris and vegetation, but Marcus was able to clear it enough for them to crawl through. Emma went first, her small size allowing her to navigate the narrow passage easily, while Marcus followed with more difficulty due to his equipment and weapons. They emerged on the far side of the fence as flashlight beams began sweeping the area where they had entered the culvert. The terrorists were only minutes behind, and Marcus needed to reach the extraction point before they could organize pursuit beyond the compound's perimeter. The mountain terrain was steep and difficult, but it would also slow down their pursuers while providing numerous positions for ambushes if necessary. Marcus activated his radio as they climbed through the forest toward higher ground. Overwatch. This is Ranger 1. Package secured and moving to extraction. Request immediate pickup at primary location. Agent Mitchell's voice responded with obvious relief. Ranger 1, extraction team is airborne and approaching your position. Estimated arrival in 12 minutes. Be advised, local law enforcement is en route to your current location. 12 minutes to reach the landing zone while carrying Emma through difficult terrain and avoiding pursuit by armed terrorists. The timeline was tight but achievable if Marcus could maintain their current pace and avoid contact with the remaining guards. Emma was exhausted but determined, following her father's instructions without complaint despite the physical demands of their escape. Behind them, Marcus could hear the terrorists organizing their pursuit, their voices growing more distant as the forest absorbed sound and their flashlights became scattered points of light in the darkness. The compound was burning now, smoke visible against the star-filled sky as emergency systems failed and electrical fires spread through the building. Halil Nazari's mountain fortress was being consumed by the flames, along with his dreams of terrorizing American military families. Marcus and Emma reached the extraction point as helicopter rotors became audible in the distance, the sound growing steadily louder as Agent Mitchell's team approached their coordinates. The landing zone was a small clearing on a ridgeline that provided enough space for a helicopter to touch down while offering excellent defensive positions if the rescue needed to be protected from ground fire. The helicopter appeared over the tree line as Marcus and Emma reached the clearing's edge, its searchlight illuminating the landing zone while door gunners scanned for threats. Marcus activated a signal beacon that would identify them as friendly. Forces then carried Emma toward the aircraft as it settled onto the rocky ground. Agent Mitchell was waiting inside the helicopter, her face showing a mixture of relief and admiration as Marcus lifted Emma through the open door. "Welcome back, both of you," she said over the engine noise. Let's get you home." As the helicopter lifted off and turned toward the valley below, Marcus held Emma close and watched the burning compound disappear behind the mountains. His daughter was safe. Halil Nazari's network had been destroyed, and the nightmare that had begun 4 days earlier in a shopping mall was finally over. Emma looked up at her father with eyes that held pain but also unshakable trust, and Marcus knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The battle for Emma Rodriguez had been won, but the war for healing and recovery was just beginning. 3 months after the mountain rescue, Emma Rodriguez sat in the morning sunlight that streamed through the kitchen window of their new home, carefully spreading peanut butter on toast while her father prepared coffee at the counter behind her. The simple domestic scene would have been unremarkable to any observer, but for Marcus, these quiet moments represented a miracle he had almost lost forever. Emma's laughter during breakfast, her animated stories about school friends, her absolute trust that her father would always be there to protect her, all of it had been restored through months of patient healing and deliberate rebuilding of their shattered world. The house itself was part of that healing process, a modest 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb 30 miles from their old apartment. Agent Mitchell had arranged the relocation through federal witness protection resources, providing Marcus and Emma with new identities and a fresh start far from the memories of shopping mall terror and mountain compound nightmares. The neighborhood was filled with families who knew nothing about Emma's kidnapping or Marcus's military background, allowing them to integrate into a community where their past remained safely buried. Emma had adapted to their new life with the remarkable resilience that children often display when provided with consistent love and security. Her bedroom was painted in soft yellow with white trim, decorated with pictures of horses and fairy tale princesses that reflected her dreams rather than her traumas. She had made friends at the local elementary school, joined a Girl Scout troop, and even convinced Marcus to adopt a golden retriever puppy named Scout, who followed her everywhere with devoted loyalty. But Marcus knew that healing was not linear, that recovery from trauma required ongoing vigilance and professional support. Emma still experienced nightmares occasionally, waking in tears that required her father's gentle reassurance that she was safe in their home. She remained wary of strangers, particularly men who reminded her of her captors, and she insisted on accompanying Marcus even on routine errands rather than staying with babysitters. These behaviors were normal responses to her ordeal. According to Dr. Sarah Williams, the child psychologist who had been working with Emma since their return, Dr. Williams had become an essential part of their healing journey, providing both Emma and Marcus with tools for processing trauma while building stronger communication patterns that would serve them throughout Emma's development. The therapy sessions took place in a comfortable office decorated with children's artwork and stuffed animals, creating an environment where Emma felt safe to express feelings she couldn't articulate at home. Marcus had initially resisted the idea of therapy, believing that military discipline and paternal love would be sufficient to help Emma recover. But Agent Mitchell had insisted that professional support was crucial for preventing long-term psychological damage, and Marcus had gradually learned to appreciate Dr. Williams's expertise in helping families rebuild after traumatic experiences. The sessions revealed that Emma remembered far more about her captivity than she had initially disclosed. She could describe details about her guards' conversations, the layout of the compound, even fragments of Arabic phrases she had overheard during her imprisonment. This information had proven valuable to federal investigators who were still tracking the remnants of Halil Nazari's network, but it also indicated that Emma's young mind had been absorbing and processing experiences that would require years to fully understand. More encouraging was Emma's growing ability to discuss her feelings about the kidnapping without becoming overwhelmed by fear or anger. She drew pictures during therapy sessions that showed her father as a superhero rescuing her from a dark castle, artwork that Dr. Williams interpreted as evidence of healthy psychological processing. Emma understood that her father had saved her life, but she also recognized that the experience had changed both of them in ways that would influence their relationship forever. Marcus's own recovery had been more complicated, involving not just the trauma of nearly losing Emma, but also the moral weight of taking lives during her rescue. He had killed 8 men during the mountain compound assault, eliminating threats to his daughter with the clinical efficiency of his military training. The terrorists had deserved their fate, and Marcus felt no guilt about protecting Emma through violent action. But the experience had reawakened psychological patterns from his combat deployments that he had hoped to leave behind. The nightmares that plagued Marcus were different from Emma's, filled with tactical scenarios and split-second decisions that could have resulted in his daughter's death. He relived the compound assault repeatedly in his dreams, analyzing every choice and considering alternative approaches that might have minimized risks. These obsessive reviews served no practical purpose, but Marcus's mind seemed compelled to replay the mission until every detail had been examined and cataloged. Dr. Williams had recommended that Marcus also pursue individual therapy to address his own trauma responses, but he had been reluctant to invest time in his own healing when Emma's needs seemed more pressing. It was Emma herself who had finally convinced him to seek help, asking why Daddy seemed sad even when they were having fun together. Children's perceptiveness often exceeded adult expectations, and Emma had recognized that her father was struggling with his own emotional recovery. Marcus began meeting with Dr. James Patterson, a therapist who specialized in working with military veterans and law enforcement personnel. Dr. Patterson understood the unique challenges faced by individuals who had been forced to use lethal force to protect innocent lives, and he helped Marcus develop strategies for managing the hypervigilance and emotional numbing that often followed such experiences. The therapy sessions revealed that Marcus's protective instincts had become somewhat obsessive following Emma's rescue. He had installed extensive security systems in their new home, including cameras, motion sensors, and reinforced doors that would prevent unauthorized entry. He researched the backgrounds of Emma's teachers and classmates' parents, maintaining detailed files on anyone who had regular contact with his daughter. Most significantly, he had begun training Emma in basic self-defense techniques and situational awareness skills that would help her recognize and avoid potential threats. These behaviors were understandable responses to the trauma they had experienced, but Dr. Patterson helped Marcus recognize when protective measures were becoming excessive and potentially harmful to Emma's development. Children needed to feel safe, but they also needed opportunities to explore their world and develop independence appropriate to their age. Finding the balance between protection and freedom would be an ongoing challenge as Emma grew older and sought greater autonomy. The legal aftermath of the mountain compound assault had been handled quietly through federal channels that avoided public scrutiny. Khalil Nazari had died in the fire that consumed his headquarters, eliminating the primary threat to military families while also preventing a trial that could have exposed sensitive intelligence operations. The surviving members of his network had been arrested or eliminated by federal task forces, effectively dismantling the terrorist organization that had targeted American personnel. Agent Mitchell had testified before closed congressional committees about the operation, emphasizing that Marcus's actions had been necessary to save Emma's life and protect other potential victims from similar attacks. The official reports classified the incident as a federal counterterrorism operation conducted with appropriate authorization, protecting Marcus from potential criminal charges while acknowledging his heroic actions in rescuing his daughter. Marcus had been offered various forms of recognition for his role in dismantling Nazari's network, including military decorations and federal commendations that would have acknowledged his courage and tactical expertise. He had declined all such honors, preferring to maintain the anonymity that protected his family's privacy. and allowed them to rebuild their lives without public attention. More practically valuable was the federal assistance provided for their relocation and Emma's ongoing care. The Witness Protection Program had covered their moving expenses and helped establish their new identities, while specialized medical and psychological services ensured that Emma received the best possible treatment for her trauma recovery. Marcus had also been offered various employment opportunities within federal law enforcement, positions that would have utilized his military skills while providing financial security for Emma's future. Marcus had initially considered returning to active duty or accepting a federal position that would allow him to continue fighting against terrorist organizations. The mountain compound assault had reminded him of his effectiveness as a warrior, and part of him was drawn to missions that could prevent other families from experiencing what he and Emma had endured. But Emma's needs took precedence over his professional ambitions, and Marcus ultimately decided that his most important mission was being a devoted father during his daughter's critical developmental years. Instead, Marcus had accepted a position as a security consultant for a private firm that specialized in protecting corporate executives and their families. The work allowed him to use his military expertise while maintaining a flexible schedule that accommodated Emma's school activities and therapy appointments. The salary was substantial enough to provide financial security while saving for Emma's college education, and the job required minimal travel that could disrupt their family routines. Emma had initially been curious about her father's new work, asking questions about the clients he protected and the security measures he designed for their homes and offices. Marcus had explained his responsibilities in age-appropriate terms, emphasizing that his job involved helping people stay safe rather than focusing on the threats they faced. Emma seemed satisfied with this explanation and proud that her father was helping other families avoid dangerous situations. The transition to their new community had been facilitated by the cover story that Marcus was a military veteran who had relocated for civilian employment opportunities. This explanation accounted for his disciplined lifestyle and security consciousness while avoiding details about their traumatic past. Neighbors viewed Marcus as a devoted single father who was successfully transitioning from military to civilian life, a narrative that generated sympathy and support rather than suspicion or excessive curiosity. Emma's integration into the local school system had been handled with particular care, involving consultations between Dr. Williams and the school's guidance counselors to ensure that her educational environment supported her emotional recovery. Her teachers had been briefed on appropriate responses to any behavioral changes or signs of distress, though Emma had adapted remarkably well to her new academic routine. The school principal, Mrs. Catherine Thompson, had taken a personal interest in Emma's success, recognizing that children who had experienced trauma often required additional support even when they appeared to be functioning normally. Mrs. Thompson had facilitated Emma's participation in extracurricular activities that would help her build friendships and develop confidence, including the school choir and a creative writing club that allowed her to express her experiences through poetry and short stories. Emma's writing had become an important outlet for processing her emotions about the kidnapping and rescue. Her stories often featured brave children who overcame frightening situations with help from protective parents or magical guardians. Dr. Williams had encouraged this creative expression, noting that storytelling allowed children to explore traumatic experiences from a safe psychological distance, while developing narrative frameworks for understanding their own resilience. One story that Emma had written particularly impressed both Dr. Williams and Marcus. Titled The Princess and the Soldier, it described a young girl who was captured by evil wizards but rescued by her father, who transformed into a powerful warrior to defeat her captors. The story ended with the princess and soldier building a beautiful castle where they lived happily together, protected by magic shields that kept all dangers away. The story revealed Emma's understanding of her father's dual nature as both gentle caregiver and fierce protector, roles that had been crystallized during her rescue from the mountain compound. She recognized that Marcus had been willing to transform into something dangerous and violent to ensure her safety, but she also trusted that this warrior aspect of his personality was controlled by his love for her rather than by anger or aggression. Marcus had been deeply moved by Emma's story, particularly by her portrayal of their home as a magical castle protected by invisible shields. The metaphor captured his own hopes for their new life together, a secure sanctuary where Emma could grow and develop without fear of external threats. Building and maintaining such a sanctuary required constant vigilance, but it also demanded the wisdom to recognize when protection became overprotection. As summer approached, Marcus began planning activities that would help Emma develop confidence and independence while maintaining appropriate safety precautions. They enrolled in a martial arts class together, an activity that would teach Emma self-defense skills while providing them with shared experiences that reinforced their bond. Emma had initially been hesitant about learning to fight, but she became enthusiastic when Marcus explained that martial arts were primarily about discipline and self-control rather than violence. The martial arts instructor, Master David Kim, was a former military police officer who understood the specific needs of students who had experienced trauma. He emphasized that true strength came from knowing when not to fight, teaching Emma that self-defense was about creating opportunities to escape danger rather than defeating opponents through aggression. These lessons complemented the therapy work that Emma was doing with Dr. Williams, reinforcing themes of personal empowerment and emotional regulation. Emma proved to be a dedicated student, practicing her forms and techniques with the same determination she brought to her schoolwork and creative projects. Marcus was proud of her commitment, but also impressed by her natural coordination and quick learning. Emma seemed to understand instinctively that martial arts training was building both physical and mental strength that would serve her throughout her life. The summer also brought opportunities for Emma to reconnect with extended family members who had been kept at a distance during the immediate aftermath of her rescue. Marcus's sister-in-law, Anna, had been devastated by Emma's kidnapping and had struggled with guilt about not being able to prevent the trauma. Anna had respected Marcus's need for privacy during their relocation and recovery, but she had maintained contact through cards and letters that expressed her ongoing love and support. When Marcus finally felt comfortable arranging a visit, Anna traveled to their new home for a week-long stay that allowed her to reconnect with Emma while observing their transformed family dynamics. Anna was impressed by Emma's resilience and maturity, noting that her niece seemed older and more thoughtful than before the kidnapping. Emma enjoyed showing Anna around their new home and neighborhood, proudly introducing her aunt to friends and teachers who had become important parts of their support network. Anna's visit also provided Marcus with adult companionship and emotional support that he had been missing during their isolation and recovery. She listened without judgment as Marcus described the mountain compound assault and his ongoing struggles with hypervigilance and protective anxiety. Anna helped Marcus recognize that his devotion to Emma's safety was admirable, but that he also needed to maintain his own emotional health and social connections. The conversation with Anna led Marcus to begin developing friendships within their new community, relationships that would provide both him and Emma with broader support networks. He joined a veterans group that met monthly at the local community center, connecting with other former military personnel who were navigating civilian life and family responsibilities. The group discussions often focused on transitioning from military to civilian careers, but they also addressed the challenges of maintaining warrior mindsets while raising children in peaceful environments. Emma encouraged her father's social development, often asking about his new friends and suggesting that he invite them to their home for dinner or backyard barbecues. She seemed to understand that her father needed adult friendships just as she needed relationships with children her own age. Emma took pride in playing hostess when Marcus's veteran friends visited, demonstrating the social skills and confidence she had developed since their relocation. The approaching first anniversary of Emma's kidnapping created anxiety for both father and daughter. Despite their substantial progress in healing and recovery, Dr. Williams had prepared them for the possibility that the anniversary date might trigger renewed trauma responses, recommending that they plan positive activities that would create new memories associated with that date rather than dwelling on painful recollections. Marcus and Emma decided to spend the anniversary weekend camping in the mountains, an activity that would demonstrate their ability to find peace and beauty in wilderness settings, despite the traumatic associations with Emma's mountain compound. Imprisonment. The camping trip would also provide opportunities for father-daughter bonding while building Emma's confidence in outdoor activities that she had previously found frightening. The campsite Marcus selected was in a state park that offered family-friendly hiking trails, fishing opportunities, and evening programs led by park rangers. The location was far from the site of Emma's rescue, but similar enough in terrain and atmosphere to provide therapeutic exposure to mountain environments without creating overwhelming anxiety. Emma had been excited about the camping trip for weeks, helping Marcus plan their meals and activities while expressing only minor concerns about sleeping in a tent. The weekend proved to be transformative for both of them. Emma discovered that she enjoyed hiking and was proud of her ability to navigate challenging trails with her father's guidance. She learned to build campfires, identify wildlife tracks, and find constellations in the night sky that was clearer than anything visible from their suburban home. Most importantly, she spent hours talking with Marcus about their experiences over the past year, expressing gratitude for his protection while also sharing her hopes and dreams for their future together. Marcus found that the camping trip allowed him to relax his hypervigilance in ways that were impossible in their daily environment. The wilderness setting triggered positive memories from his military training rather than traumatic associations with combat operations. He enjoyed teaching Emma outdoor skills that connected her to nature while building her self-confidence and problem-solving abilities. The experience reminded him that adventure and exploration could be sources of joy rather than danger when approached with appropriate preparation and caution. On the anniversary night of Emma's kidnapping, father and daughter sat beside their campfire sharing stories and roasting marshmallows, while Emma's dog Scout played nearby. Emma asked Marcus to tell her about the night he had rescued her, a topic they had discussed many times, but never in such a peaceful setting. Marcus described his feelings during the helicopter flight to the mountain compound, emphasizing his determination to bring her home safely and his pride in her courage during their escape. Emma listened thoughtfully, then shared her own memories of waiting in the basement room while hoping that her father would find her. She described how she had tried to stay brave by remembering stories he had told her about knights and princesses, using those narratives to maintain hope during her darkest moments. Emma's ability to discuss her captivity without becoming overwhelmed demonstrated the substantial progress she had made in processing her trauma through therapy and family support. As they prepared for bed in their tent, Emma asked Marcus about their plans for the following year. She was curious about whether they would remain in their current home, whether she could continue with her martial arts training, and whether Marcus would be able to attend all of her school events and activities. Her questions reflected both normal childhood concerns about stability and deeper needs for reassurance that their rebuilt life would continue to provide safety and support. Marcus assured Emma that their current home was permanent, that his work schedule would always prioritize her needs, and that their family bonds had been strengthened rather than damaged by their traumatic experiences. He explained that difficult experiences sometimes made people stronger and more appreciative of the good things in their lives, using their own recovery as evidence that healing was possible even after terrible events. The camping trip concluded with a morning hike to a scenic overlook that provided views of the valley where their new home was located. Emma used Marcus's binoculars to identify familiar landmarks, including her school and the park where she played with friends. The perspective helped her visualize their place in the larger community while reinforcing her sense of belonging and security in their chosen environment. As they packed their camping gear and prepared to return home, Emma made Marcus promise that they would take similar trips regularly, creating traditions that would strengthen their relationship while building positive associations with outdoor adventures. Marcus agreed enthusiastically, recognizing that such experiences would continue to support Emma's development while providing him with opportunities to demonstrate protective guidance rather than defensive vigilance. The drive home was filled with Emma's excited planning for future camping trips and outdoor adventures. She wanted to learn more advanced hiking skills, try fishing in different lakes and streams, and eventually attempt overnight backpacking expeditions that would test her growing outdoor competence. Marcus was pleased by Emma's enthusiasm, while also appreciating that her goals required ongoing partnership rather than independent achievement, ensuring that their father-daughter bond would remain central to her developing interests. Returning to their suburban home after the anniversary camping trip marked a symbolic completion of their first year of recovery and rebuilding. Emma ran through the house greeting Scout and rediscovering favorite toys and books that had awaited her return. Marcus unpacked their camping gear while reflecting on the remarkable transformation that had occurred since Emma's rescue from the mountain compound. The little girl who had been terrorized by kidnappers and traumatized by violence had become a confident, resilient child who could discuss her experiences without being overwhelmed by fear or anger. The father, who had been consumed by protective rage and tactical planning, had evolved into a more balanced parent who could provide security without sacrificing Emma's opportunities for growth and independence. Most importantly, their relationship had deepened through shared adversity and mutual support during the healing process. Emma trusted Marcus completely while also understanding that she was developing her own strengths and capabilities. Marcus had learned to channel his protective instincts into positive guidance while recognizing that Emma's resilience and intelligence were her greatest assets for navigating future challenges. Dr. Williams had recently suggested that their regular therapy sessions could be reduced to monthly meetings, acknowledging the substantial progress both Marcus and Emma had made in processing their trauma and building healthy coping strategies. The transition represented another milestone in their recovery, evidence that professional support had successfully equipped them with tools for continued healing and development. As summer continued, Marcus and Emma began planning for the upcoming school year with excitement rather than anxiety. Emma would be entering third grade with friends she had made during her previous year, while Marcus had established routines and relationships that supported his dual roles as protective father and successful professional. Their new life had become genuinely new rather than simply a refuge from their traumatic past. Emma's bedtime routine now included gratitude exercises where she identified 3 good things that had happened during each day. This practice, recommended by Dr. Williams, helped reinforce positive thinking patterns while building Emma's awareness of the many sources of joy and support in her daily life. Marcus often participated in these exercises, sharing his own gratitude for Emma's health, their comfortable home, and the opportunities they had been given to rebuild their lives. On quiet evenings when Emma was reading or drawing in her room, Marcus sometimes reflected on the chain of events that had brought them to this peaceful existence. The shopping mall kidnapping had been the worst experience of his life, but it had also revealed strengths and resources he might never have discovered under normal circumstances. Agent Mitchell's support, Dr. Williams's expertise, the community's acceptance, and Emma's remarkable resilience had all contributed to an outcome that seemed miraculous compared to the nightmare they had initially faced. Marcus no longer defined himself primarily as a former soldier or even as Emma's protector, though both roles remained important aspects of his identity. He had become a father in the fullest sense of the word, someone whose life was dedicated to nurturing his daughter's development while creating an environment where she could flourish safely. The transformation had been painful and difficult, but it had ultimately produced something beautiful that neither of them could have imagined during their darkest moments. Emma's own transformation was perhaps even more remarkable, demonstrating the incredible capacity children possess for healing and growth when provided with consistent love and professional support. She had retained her natural curiosity and joy while developing wisdom and strength that would serve her throughout her life. The princess in her stories was no longer just waiting for rescue. She was learning to be her own hero while appreciating the devoted knight who would always be there to support her adventures. As Marcus tucked Emma into bed on a warm summer evening, she asked him to tell her the story of the brave soldier who saved his daughter from the mountain castle. It was a story they had shared many times, but Emma never tired of hearing about her father's courage and determination during her rescue. Marcus obliged, describing his infiltration of the compound and the fierce battle that had ultimately brought her home safely. But tonight, Emma added a new ending to their familiar story. She described how the soldier and princess had built a beautiful life together after their adventure, surrounded by friends and filled with new dreams for the future. The princess had learned to be strong and brave like her father, while the soldier had learned to find peace and happiness in their everyday life together. Marcus smiled as he listened to Emma's addition to their story, recognizing that she was describing not just their past but their present and future as well. They had indeed built something beautiful from the ashes of their trauma, creating a life that honored both their love for each other and their individual growth and healing. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Marcus sat quietly in her room for a few minutes, grateful for the peaceful scene and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new opportunities for joy and discovery. The nightmare that had begun in a shopping mall was truly over, replaced by dreams of camping trips and school plays, martial arts competitions and family celebrations, all the ordinary miracles that make up a life well lived. Outside Emma's window, Scout was lying contentedly in the backyard, alert but relaxed as he maintained his own protective watch over their home. The dog's presence was a reminder that security could be maintained without anxiety, that vigilance could coexist with peace when balanced by love and wisdom. Marcus Rodriguez had completed the most important mission of his life, not by defeating enemies in combat, but by learning to build a life worthy of the daughter he had fought so hard to save. Emma Rodriguez had survived the worst that evil people could inflict, not just by enduring but by growing stronger and more compassionate through her experience. Together, they had discovered that some bonds are forged in crisis but strengthened in peace, that healing is possible even after the deepest wounds, and that love truly can conquer fear when supported by courage, wisdom, and the determination never to surrender hope. Their story would continue for many years to come, filled with the ordinary adventures and extraordinary moments that define family life at its best. But the foundation had been laid during their first year of recovery, built on trust, communication, and the unshakable knowledge that whatever challenges the future might bring, they would face them together. 5 years had passed since that terrible night in the mountains, and Emma Rodriguez now stood at her middle school graduation, her cap slightly askew as she searched the crowd for her father's familiar face. At 12 years old, she had grown into a confident young woman who carried herself with quiet strength and spoke with the wisdom of someone who understood that life could be both fragile and beautiful. Her dark hair was longer now, braided with small ribbons that caught the afternoon sunlight, and her smile radiated the kind of genuine happiness that comes from feeling truly secure in the world. Marcus found her eyes across the auditorium and gave her a thumbs up, his chest swelling with pride as he watched his daughter prepare to receive recognition for academic excellence and community service. The little girl who had once cowered in a basement prison had become a leader among her peers, someone who volunteered at animal shelters and tutored younger students with learning difficulties. Emma's compassion seemed to flow naturally from her own experience of vulnerability, creating connections with others who needed support and understanding. The graduation ceremony proceeded with the usual speeches about bright futures and endless possibilities, but Marcus found himself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. Emma's resilience had been tested in ways that most children never experience, yet she had emerged not hardened by trauma, but softened by empathy. She understood suffering in ways her classmates couldn't imagine, but rather than making her bitter, this knowledge had made her kinder. After the ceremony, Emma ran to Marcus with her diploma in hand, throwing her arms around him with the enthusiastic affection that had never dimmed despite her growing maturity. "Did you see Mrs. Patterson crying during my speech?" she asked, referring to her favorite teacher who had become something of a mentor over the past 3 years. "I think she's going to miss having me in her classroom." Marcus smiled, remembering Emma's graduation speech about the importance of never giving up hope, even when circumstances seem impossible. She had spoken about butterflies emerging from cocoons, about flowers growing through concrete, using metaphors that seemed simple but carried deeper meanings for anyone who knew her story. The speech had been Emma's idea entirely, though Marcus suspected she understood its personal significance better than her audience realized. They celebrated at Emma's favorite restaurant, a small Italian place where the owner knew their names and always saved Emma's preferred corner booth. Over pasta and garlic bread, Emma talked excitedly about starting high school in the fall, about trying out for the debate team, and about her summer plans to volunteer at a camp for children who had experienced trauma. Her enthusiasm was infectious. But Marcus also noticed the thoughtful pauses in her conversation, moments when Emma seemed to be processing deeper thoughts about her future. "Dad," Emma said as they shared a piece of chocolate cake, "I've been thinking about what I want to do with my life." She paused, choosing her words carefully in the way she had learned during years of therapy sessions. "I want to help other kids who have been through scary things. Maybe become a counselor or work with police to find missing children." Marcus nodded, unsurprised by Emma's career aspirations, but moved by her desire to transform her own pain into purpose for helping others. "That's a beautiful goal, sweetheart. You have a gift for understanding what people need when they're hurting." Emma smiled, then grew more serious. "I know what it feels like to be really scared and think no one is coming to help. If I can be the person who shows up for other kids the way you showed up for me, then maybe something good will come from what happened to us." The conversation continued as they drove home through familiar streets lined with oak trees that had grown taller over their 5 years in the neighborhood. Emma pointed out houses where her friends lived, the park where she had learned to ride, a bike without training wheels, the library where she had discovered her love of mystery novels. Each landmark represented stability and normalcy, building blocks of a childhood that had been reconstructed with intention and care. At home, Emma retreated to her room to video chat with friends about summer plans, while Marcus sat in his study, reviewing case files from his security consulting business. His work had evolved over the years to focus primarily on protecting families who faced credible threats, using his unique experience and skills to ensure that other parents would never endure what he had gone through. The business had grown through word-of-mouth recommendations, attracting clients who valued Marcus's understanding of both tactical security and emotional recovery. Agent Mitchell still contacted Marcus occasionally, usually to consult on cases involving international terrorism or child abduction. Their professional relationship had developed into something resembling friendship, built on mutual respect and shared commitment to protecting innocent families. Mitchell had attended Emma's graduation ceremony, sitting quietly in the back row but beaming with pride as Emma delivered her speech about hope and resilience. The threat from Halil Nazari's network had been permanently eliminated years ago. But Marcus maintained security protocols that balanced reasonable precautions with Emma's need for normal teenage experiences. She was allowed to attend sleepovers and school events, but Marcus knew the details of her whereabouts and had established communication procedures for any unusual situations. Emma accepted these measures without complaint, understanding that her father's vigilance came from love rather than paranoia. As evening approached, Marcus found Emma in the backyard, throwing a tennis ball for Scout, who at 5 years old remained energetic and devoted to his family. The golden retriever had become more than just a pet. He was Emma's confidant and companion, someone who listened to her secrets and provided comfort during difficult moments. Scout's presence had been therapeutic for both Emma and Marcus, offering unconditional love and the calming influence that animals can provide to trauma survivors. "Dad, can we have the camping trip we talked about before school starts?" Emma asked as Scout returned with the ball, his tail wagging with anticipation. "For another throw. I want to try that hiking trail in Colorado we saw in the magazine." Marcus nodded, pleased that Emma continued to seek outdoor adventures that challenged her abilities while creating opportunities for father-daughter bonding. Their camping trips had become annual traditions, each one building Emma's confidence and outdoor skills while providing them with uninterrupted time to talk about her hopes, fears, and dreams. The mountains no longer held traumatic associations for either of them. Instead, they had become symbols of beauty and possibility. That night, as Marcus tucked Emma into bed despite her protests that she was too old for such rituals, she asked him to tell her one more time about the night he had rescued her from the compound. It was a story they had shared countless times over the years, but Emma never tired of hearing about her father's courage and determination. The narrative had evolved to include Emma's own bravery during her captivity and her strength during their recovery, emphasizing that they had both been heroes in their own ways. "The best part of the story," Emma said as Marcus finished, "is not the rescue part, but everything that came after. The way we built this life together, the way we learned to be happy again. That's the real victory." Marcus kissed Emma's forehead and agreed that their recovery and rebuilding had indeed been the most important part of their journey. They had proven that love could overcome fear, that healing was possible even after the deepest wounds, and that families could emerge stronger from their greatest challenges. As Marcus turned off Emma's bedroom light and stepped into the hallway, he reflected on the remarkable young woman his daughter had become. Emma possessed strength without hardness, wisdom without cynicism, and compassion born from her own experience of suffering. She would face the challenges of adolescence and young adulthood with advantages that couldn't be taught in any classroom, understanding that she could survive anything life might bring because she had already survived the worst. The house settled into its familiar nighttime quiet, punctuated only by Scout's gentle snoring from his bed-in, Emma's room, and the distant sound of sprinklers watering the garden Marcus had planted in their backyard. Outside, the neighborhood slept peacefully under the protection of streetlights and security systems, families safe in their homes because people like Marcus worked to ensure that threats were identified and neutralized before they could cause harm. Marcus stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the stars that were visible even through the suburban light pollution, remembering a time when he had thought his world was ending. Emma's kidnapping had been the worst experience of his life, but it had also revealed strengths and connections he might never have discovered under ordinary circumstances. Their story had become one of transformation rather than victimization, of growth rather than mere survival. In just a few months, Emma would start high school, beginning the journey toward independence that would eventually take her away from their shared home toward her own adventures and accomplishments. Marcus looked forward to watching Emma discover her own path while knowing that their bond, forged in crisis and strengthened through healing, would remain unbreakable regardless of the physical distance that might separate them. The future stretched ahead full of possibilities that neither Marcus nor Emma could fully imagine. High school graduation, college applications, career choices, relationships, and perhaps someday a family of her own. Each milestone would build on the foundation they had created together, proof that even the most traumatic experiences could become sources of strength when met with love, courage, and the determination never to surrender hope. As Marcus finally settled into bed, he whispered a prayer of gratitude for the gift of another day with Emma, for her health and happiness, and for the ordinary miracles that filled their life together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but they would face them as they had learned to face everything else, together, with love and with absolute faith in their ability to overcome whatever obstacles might appear. The little girl who had been taken from a shopping mall had grown into a young woman who understood that she could change the world through acts of kindness and courage. The father who had once defined himself as a warrior had learned that his greatest battles would be fought not with weapons, but with patience, wisdom, and unconditional love. Their story would continue for many years to come, but the most important chapters had already been written in the quiet moments of recovery, in shared laughter over breakfast tables, in bedtime stories that celebrated both their survival and their hope. They had discovered that some victories are measured not in defeated enemies, but in healed hearts, not in tactical success, but in the courage to love deeply despite knowing how much can be lost. Marcus Rodriguez and Emma Rodriguez had found their way home to each other, and home was wherever they chose to build it together. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.